This is a Two Front podcast.
You got a crooked smile, well that don't bother me much. You double over, working double time, you double tough. I'll just shine it up until the sun hit like a glare. I gotta dare, get the fuck up out the chair.
Happy Dentist Gang, I know we've almost all been here before. You're drowning in student debt, trapped in the chair for 10 hours a day, and desperately chasing the next clinical skill that might finally make you happy. What if there was another way? What if you could build a thriving dental group where both your team and your patients love showing up? Where everyone gets every other Friday off, works half days, and still crushes it financially. Today's guest did exactly that. After burning out chairside, he created a revolutionary workflow that eliminates handoffs, maximizes efficiency, and prioritizes his team's well-being above all else. His group's motto, work, life, thrive. Dr. Dipesh Patel, welcome to the Happy Dentist.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Me too. So obviously you're the founder of Blueprint Smiles in Atlanta, Georgia. You guys have 8 locations. It took you a while. You were telling me to actually start building out your blueprint. Before we dive into that, just tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got here in the first place.
Yeah, so I am technically a former dentist. I say I'm a recovering dentist because I don't practice anymore. But I did practice for 11 years. So my undergrad was at the University of Georgia. Went to dental school in Fort Lauderdale at Nova Southeastern. And my claim to fame is I was a negative millionaire at the age of 26. So I was one of those, students that came out, had a ton of student loan debt from school, and then bought a practice prematurely that I probably had no business buying. And that kind of started the journey of Blueprint Smiles. I tell people it kind of happened accidentally. I never started off wanting to create a group. It just happened organically over time.
Hold on. So what does it mean to be a negative millionaire?
So my net worth at 26 on paper was negative $1 million. So I think the practice was about 650 of debt, and my personal student loan debt was about 450 in that range somewhere at the time. So and I probably had like $5,000 to my main total in my bank account.
So welcome to the club of being a dentist in the United States.
Correct. Yep. And it's
You mean
more
you
and
were
more
an
a bigger
average
club.
dentist?
That is average dentist now.
That's funny because I literally just made content about how people think dentists are rich. And I'm like, you need to take a look at the debt. You need to take a look at the debt. So so talk to me. You practiced for 11 years before starting your first practice. Talk to me about that journey. What got you to open up your first practice? Or you opened up your first practice and then you opened up your second one 11 years later. Is that right?
No. So then we opened up several in between that time. So my first practice, I'll start with that one. My first practice was about 5 months out of school. So I graduated in 2012. I think I started practice somewhere in July, August, and I bought my first one. Technically bought in December. We closed, and I took over January 1st, 2013. So that was my first practice. But I told people that was accidental. I never came out of school going, I'm gonna go ahead and buy a practice really early on. I actually don't have any family dentists. I was the first dentist in my immediate family, or actually my extended family as well. And I was the first person that I know from my friend circle to buy a practice as well. So it wasn't like somebody was guiding me to make these idiotic decisions, as I call it now. It happened because I was in a bad position, in my opinion. At the time, I thought it was a bad position. I was working for a group, a DSO at the time, that promised mentorship, said, hey, you'd have a mentor doctor. When you get there, our group's phenomenal. I got there. They had fired that person a month before, apparently. I was the only single doctor. They said they would support me in all these things. They didn't. And so I think it was a couple months in, and I was just like, well, if they're not going to, I might as well just do this by myself. Young, naive 26. Hindsight, I wouldn't do that again because I barely knew dentistry, let alone business of dentistry. But started looking for practices, pretty much bought the first or second practice I looked at. There wasn't much on the market. A broker and accountant convinced me that I would probably do well on it. And I think that's probably what I wanted to hear. I bought a practice, and then 6 months later, I realized that, yeah, this might be a big mistake. And that started the self-development journey that eventually led to another practice a couple years later, few more, a couple years after that. And then fast forward 11 years, we have 8 now, and I'm completely out of the chair.
Wow, wild. In a nutshell, 60
Yeah.
seconds of your life story. So you and I were talking before, and I wanted to just kind of hone in on this specific question, which is what was the traditional or what was the moment that traditional dentistry broke you? Was that the DSO moment?
Yeah, and now I hate to say because I'm a part of my own TSO now, technically, or a group. To some degree, yes, and I honestly, if I look back, I think it was some degree it was a DSO, and some it was a young 26 naive individual, right? Just trying to conquer the world in its head. So I don't want to put full blame on the DSO. They did promise some things that they didn't do on their end of it, right? And I think looking back, I think that TSO was growing in their infancy stages and they hadn't figured out a few things, right? And I've seen how that kind of transpires over time. So, but I would say if I'm putting any type of responsibility, I always put as much responsibility on myself as the other side, if not more on myself. I don't like to play victim in anything, especially when I can look back on it. I could have done better due diligence with this DSO. I could have asked better questions. I could have changed all kinds of things, right, in my circumstances. Instead, I just decided to change myself and just kind of leave. But they didn't give me some of the things that they said they would, right? So I came from Nova, which was very high tech at the time, and I think they still are. Where I was doing rotary endo 12 years ago, familiar with CBCTs, scanners, all that was new technology I was familiar with, and they said, "Yeah, we'll have all that." I came to this practice, and I'm talking about hand filing and barely any extraction instruments,
Oh
and they
my
would say, "I'll
God.
get it for you. I'll get it for you." They never got it for me, right? And you go month after month, and you're like, "Hey, can I get some support, doctor support?" And because that doctor wasn't there anymore, and they're like, "Yeah, we will," but really didn't feel like I was getting support either. So I think those were the things that kind of drove me to jump a little bit quicker, and that became the thesis of what I know I didn't want in our group, and so that's why we kind of flipped it upside down.
Wow. I mean, listen, I think what a lot of people don't realize is how vulnerable we are as young dentists. Right out of school, we're basically fresh artists that are looking to create art in people's mouths, and we're vulnerable. We need mentorship. We also need money because we've got student debt, we've got loans, we've got everything. And, I think I love when you said about not being a victim and trying to empower yourself, but at the same time, I do think it's really hard because you don't know what you don't know. And so I'm curious, you now own your own group. You worked for a group that really broke you because they didn't make those promises. I'm still trying to figure out myself, like, what is the formula for dentists to be happy, for us to elevate as a profession, for dentistry to elevate to the point of functional medicine that, functional medicine has. I'm curious, what do you guys do and what sort of support do you promise your associates that's different than what your group that you originally worked for promised and didn't deliver on?
Uh, I would say the biggest thing with our group, if you ask most of our doctors, even some that have come and left, is we're overly transparent in everything we do. So even on the hiring process, I'm not really trying to sell anybody. I'll tell our doctors if I try to sell you on something and it isn't what we said it was going to be, it's going to backfire for both of us. It's not going to be good for the business. It's not going to be good for you as well, right? So we're overly transparent because I think I was lacking that with that group originally. So we decided, hey, we're just not going to lie to anyone. But that also means being honest with doctors coming out of school. So when I interview doctors and new associates coming out of school, I tell them, look, it's going to be hard at the beginning for you to have your cake and eat it too. And what I mean by that is for you to make $1 million and you have the skill sets you have and you want the autonomy and not work the hours. No one's going to be able to afford that because a business will break at the same time. Like as a business owner, I can't pay you 50% of everything you do as a GP clinician. It just won't work. I have overhead, right? So, and I can't pay you guarantees that you can't fulfill either. So, if you are looking for, let's say, a high guarantee coming out of school and you want mentorship and you want a slower schedule and you want to be taught everything, I can't give you all that, right? But what I can give you is a fair pay, the ability to earn more, a lot of mentorship, a flexibility, and then what you do with that is up to you, right? That I can get you, right? And
Mhm.
so every time I talk to an associate, whether it's a colleague's friend or it doesn't have to be for us, I will tell them that. I'm like, if you're young, I know we all have bills to pay. I totally get that, right? the best investment you can do. You just spent all this money going through undergrad and dental school to begin with, and graduate, post grad afterwards as well, possibly. You spent all that money. How about we invest a little bit more money and time into yourself still? Because your journey really starts right when you get out of school. Your education, in my opinion, becomes right out of school, not while you're in school. So I would tell them, look for a job where you don't really care about the money, make enough so you can pay for your rent and stuff, right? Look for that because that will have a multiplying effect for your rest of your career if you get the skill sets now. It's pretty much what I did with my own practice when I had nothing. Had nothing, bought a terrible practice. I kid you not, my first year owning a practice, I practiced full time and I made $50,000 because the was losing money,
What?
right? I was making more with the DSO, by the way. So, but any penny I earned outside of needing it for rent and utilities and the bare minimum, I invested into self-development. So I invested into business courses, leadership courses, so many clinical courses. I averaged 140 CE credits every 2 years for up until like 10 years, up until like 2 years ago now when I stepped away from the chair. And I
Well,
did that because there's a multiplying effect of speed and skill set. And as dentists, the beauty is the faster, better, smarter you get as a dentist, well, we can see more patients, do quicker treatment, do better treatment, and that potential is endless of what you can earn afterwards.
wow, yeah, 100%. And so much of what I'm hearing you say is that you basically lacked great leadership at the group that you worked at because great leadership is great communication. That's part of it, as obviously you know and you've experienced. And then for the group that you created, you invested in understanding what it means to become a great leader so that your associates could trust you and know that they're going to get their worth out of this practice, out of working at your practice, and know they're not going to make $1 million, but you're telling them that and you're telling them what they're gonna get in exchange so that they know and they're gonna put their heart the right person is gonna put their hearts into being the best dentist at your practice and not just like, constantly be looking for the next thing because they know that you're investing in their career through what you're giving to them, which is amazing.
Yep. I tell people money is the byproduct of doing things the right way and delivering a great product, right? That's all it is. That's how I think in the simplest way, how you deliver, um, extra value to your patients or your teammates indirectly has an effect on how much money you make. So if you wanna make more money, start with the end in mind that way, and I think it always works out when you do it altruistically, so.
You know that sinking feeling when the same patient keeps coming back for crown after crown? Yeah, we've all been there. Here's the thing. What if we could actually prevent all that mess with a simple bite correction? That's where we come in at Two Front. We handle the whole Invisalign process for you. I'm talking zero ClinChecks, zero lab bills, barely any chair time. Oh, and we take on the liability too. Your patient gets a healthy bite that'll save them thousands down the road. You get to be the hero who prevented years of dental drama. It's honestly a no brainer. Check out Two Front and start helping your patients dodge a lifetime of dental work today. Your story kind of reminds me of an early experience that I had working for a group practice that had their leader, their CEO was a dentist who he really meant well. And I knew that. He took me out to lunch a couple times a week. We texted about things like he really, really meant well. But I still struggle to articulate why the leadership wasn't there. Like, I didn't feel taken care of as an associate. I didn't feel valued. And so I just think it's really important because I'm always trying to think about for our listeners where to figure out like what is the move, right? Like if you're an associate, you don't have a practice, where do you work? And you're just making me kind of just realize like even the fact you've invested in leadership, like that is a reason to go and work at Blueprint Smiles because leadership is just taking care of people. So the fact that you're even taking the initiative to take care of people is just the beginning. It's like the core. Like I can tell you that the person who I worked for did not invest in leadership because I didn't feel taken care of. And I think that's kind of the end state. Like I didn't feel like my career mattered or whatnot, even though he was nice, even though he took me out to lunch and all these different things. So I just think it's a great thing about what you guys were doing over in Atlanta.
I appreciate that, and I learned that from other mentors of mine, right? Other phenomenal CEOs in dentistry and outside of dentistry, and the one that resonates for me, for any CEOs that are kind of listening, is It's simple. Somebody once told me to grow your organization, the process is great leaders need to create more leaders.
Mhm.
That's it, right? So the more leaders I can create that create more leaders afterwards has a ripple effect through your organization, and that's how organization grows. And if you look at that as a baseline method of just me and an associate, for example, I have to be try to be the best leader I can for the organization so that way I can pass that leadership on to that dentist associate at the office who leads the team and then leads the patient experience, right? In reality. And so I don't really control the office level. I'm not the direct my job as the CEO of my group is to take care of my people. My people take care of my patients or our patients, right? I don't take care of the patients. My customer is different now, right? And so you just got to kind of reframe it. And those that invest in that tend to do a little bit better, right? Now, we're in dentistry, so let's not get it twisted. You have to invest in clinical skill set as much as leadership, but you can't leave the other side untapped.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And if you had a recipe for how to build a leader, what would you say that recipe is?
A lot of books, a lot of trial and errors. But I would say as much investment in clinical skill set as much as human development. So as much a IQ and EQ at the same time, emotional intelligence. I think the greatest leaders have very high EQ, and I think that's something that should be studied. Right? There's some great books about it. Emotional intelligence is what EQ means, and I would tell everyone invest in that, right? Because even as a doctor, you have to, be able to get a good gauge of your patient, get a good gauge of your teammates and their emotions and feelings at all times. That to me would be the best recipe, right, of a great leader. I could be great on the leadership side, but if I hadn't had done what I had done as a clinician, I don't think I would have had the same buy-in with my doctors. Most of what I tell them to do, I've actually done. So they
Mm.
see that I'm not just spitting out words and saying, you must do this when I wasn't willing to do it myself. And that would to me would be the formula behind it.
I really love that so much because, you're leading from the front. And I always think, I obviously run a clear liner company to front. And I always tell like our partners who are considering joining us, there's it's really hard to work with a clear liner company who isn't built by a clinician because they don't know your struggles.
Right.
They don't know if it works, right? Like, does it work? They don't know. They're likely a business person. Have they ever strained people's teeth with those aligners or those systems? Maybe not. So I really like that because I do think that to lead from the front, like you have to walk that person's shoes. You have to walk your customer's shoes. So in your case, your customers, part of your customers are your associates. And so how can you just prove to them, like, I am telling you this because I've done it. I'm in your shoes.
Right. Yeah, and it was a little bit easier when I was still practicing, right? So everything kind of went through me and my business partner, who was a practicing dentist as well. Everything, like let's say we're using a new clear aligner company, we would test it out first, right?
Hmm.
And we would make sure that the efficacy was there, and it wasn't just because we can save a dime, for example, right? We would make sure clinically it would work. Now, as we stepped away from the chair, that's why we have a clinical director, a dental director now. So we still run new products, new systems through that person because we really trust that feedback because we're just not going to force anything down our doctor's throats. I've had that feeling before, right? Where they're like, "Hey, this is all you get. You should just use it." I go, "Well, that's where that confidence doesn't happen." And then when, groups or anybody look at KPIs and they're like, "Well, this doctor is failing or quote unquote failing." Well, they don't kind of look at their part of the equation. Did you give them all the resources to do well? And a lot of times the answer is usually no, they didn't, right? They just assume, well, somebody else is able to do it. You should be able to do it as well. That's not how it works.
Or like their marketing's really good, looks great, try
Right.
it, give it a shot,
Right.
which is what happens a lot of the times. And we don't even realize it because we don't realize how marketing works.
Yep.
That's what I thought at least. So I want to ask you, obviously, you guys have something really special and unique going on in Blueprint that you and I were talking about beforehand. There's a lot of different components to this. So I wanted to share for our listeners, you have a very unique process for checking out patients for their treatment. Talk to me about this.
Yeah, so it's probably part of our blueprint, I guess, to use the same words. So our entire process is we kind of eliminated what I call waste, right? So it actually came from I think Toyota manufacturing, right? I think when Toyota came prominent in the US, and there's a book about it, they went through the process of everything they do and they were like, let's eliminate waste and make things cleaner and more efficient. So we kind of took that approach to to dentistry altogether. So we don't really need a front in our operations, as I call it. We have one front, but whether we have a startup or a $4 million practice, they all both have just one front desk, right? And that front desk is really just the glue to the office, but in reality, they don't really need to do anything specialized. So our process kind of runs where a patient comes in, they can virtually check in through their phone. There's a tablet they can check in that way. Everything's already been done on the back end for that patient. Uh, a color changes in our system is green. Green in our system just means the patient's good to go. And we have a checklist, and there's a great book called The Checklist Manifesto. If people want to read it.
Hmm.
We kind of follow that in our entire process. Every position kind of has a checklist manifesto. Less mistakes happen. Your brain doesn't have to use it all the time. And then as a result, you make less errors. But in our checklist for the front, they're just checking to go, is insurance and is a patient chart active, medical history, dental history, the pertinent stuff consents, is it ready to go? They change the color to green. From that point on, an assistant or hygienist or a GP model takes the patient to the back and they start the whole experience in the back, right? We consider the operatory like an office. So we move around the patient never moves. So every one of our operatories is interchangeable. So you could do any surgical procedure in there, any hygiene visit in there, doesn't matter, right? So even if it started on hygiene and the doctor treatment plans a couple fillings, the hygienist will take their next patient to another room instead. The doctor will just do the work in that room. And that eliminates waste again. Setup, breakdown, that whole process. Once the patient's in the room, all the treatment planning is done in the room. The presentation's done in the room. The checkout is done in the room. Next visit's done in the room. The payment's done in the room. That's all done in the operatory by the assistant, doctor, or hygienist. The front's not involved in that process at all. And then they walk the patient all the way out. So we've eliminated pretty much all handoffs, and that's what our kind of system runs off of.
Mm, I love that. It kind of also reminds me of like Elon's philosophy of like basically like delete, delete, delete. I'd love to see what your room looks like because I'm kind of like imagining it of like the clinical, the checkout, like obviously they're going to be sitting up for the checkout process. Like, how's your tablet positioned? How does the doctor work around the tablet? I'd love to see that if you could send me a picture.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we have tablets for certain things. We don't even need the tablet, so I can make it. It's our real operatory doesn't look anything more special than most people's operatory. There's a TV in the roof for patient, relaxation, a big TV in the front. That's our TV. That's our presentation TV. So they can show pictures, x-rays, treatment plans, whatever they need to up there. There's redundant models of anything that you need in every operatory. We have scanners as well, so they use that part of the treatment presentation. So everything the doctor needs is in that operatory. Every operatory has a Cavitron too. Every single one does, right? Every operatory has an intraoral camera, isolites, you name it. Every gadget is in that operatory, so you never have to leave. So whatever the doctor, assistant, hygienist needs is within a hand reach for that person, right? So they can do all that presentation and educate the patient at the same time.
Got it. And so if a patient's checking out from the operatory, is there like an Apple Pay or like how do they check out from the room?
So if we do have that process, they can use Apple Pay. So we actually have swipers, technically in every single operatory that merges with our
Wow.
PMS, right? So it's literally the assistant, somebody grabbing the credit card and going tap, and the patient can sign through that. They can sign through the phone. Most times, you don't need the patient to sign either at this point in time for certain credit cards and stuff. So, and that automatically goes into the ledger frictionlessly. So everything is to remove friction in our process, and so that makes it easy for the patient. They can pay through their phone as well. So we can literally just send a link, and they can just pay through the phone if they don't want to hand us a credit card.
I mean, taking away friction in that process is so important. So I think this leads me to my next question, which is that I think the most recent thing I read, and tell me if you know the actual statistic here, is that only 50% of treatment plans actually get accepted generally by dentists. And you guys, I know you mentioned, have a much higher close rate. So I'm curious, what do your dentists do successfully and consistently to close cases confidently and get that higher conversion rate?
So I'll start with the friction part, right? Friction to me breaks momentum. So because of that, consider that in the handoff. When you're doing handoffs, that's friction, right? So I'll use myself as the dentist. I sat there and diagnosed everything with the patient. I went over why they need it. They told me they understood why they needed a crown. In our process, the assistant and doctor have not left the room most of the time, and they presented the financial obligations for that crown. Our doctors will present the finances too, right? They'll go through and say, this is exactly what your crown's going to cost. Because I think if you're being transparent, we're talking about the transparency of us to our doctors. We also say the same thing. We're like, well, you're the one who's going to get paid for this procedure. You're the one who's recommending this procedure. Then why are we hiding behind a treatment coordinator going over the pricing? Do you believe
Totally.
in what you're presenting? Do you believe in the value you're presenting? If the doctor says, I don't know, well, we already have a problem. If a doctor as a whole doesn't feel comfortable and can comfortably say that they believe that that implant is worth $2,000 because of the level of service they deliver, they're never going to be able to close any cases anyway, right? Because they don't believe it yet. So we encourage our back team, which is our doctor assistant hygienists, to present the treatment. So they will turn around afterwards and present the dollar amount instantly. I believe that if I'm handing that off to, let's just say you're a treatment coordinator in this scenario, well, you have to stop what you're doing. You haven't built that relationship with that patient.
Hmm.
Time is being wasted in that process. And there's studies that show the second from emotionally buying something and financial presentation, that every minute that you waste between that conversation, conversion rates drop. So what we did is got rid of any of that time, right? So we go instantly. So you understand why you need a crown. It's already put in. We're spitting it out right away, right? So not only is that time element to our benefit, right? For that emotion to cognitive part for the patient to say yes, the friction isn't there because if I were to send you in the room, now you don't know the patient. You haven't built the rapport like I built the rapport on that patient to the patient. Now you're starting over, technically speaking. And you may not build that same rapport that I had just got done building for that patient. So when we got rid of that friction, we saw a higher treatment conversion as well. So that's why we kind of got rid of it.
Got it. And so do you guys not have any treatment coordinators at all? Like the doctors do everything?
Correct. No trip coordinators.
Wow. Okay. Amazing. So are your doctors trained in like objection handling? Like if a patient says, now's not a good time, I've got a car payment. Do you guys train your doctors on how to handle that?
We do, and that we don't train it on like a hard sell kind of technique, right? To train our doctors on it. We tell our doctors very, very early on, treatment closing is all based on value creation. People buy what they value. So if you keep hearing this objection, I'm not saying the car isn't more important to that than that tooth because they might need it for family transportation and stuff, right? But the value isn't there yet. So we're not at the same realities yet for the patient. I believe the crown's the most important thing. They don't. Through education, communication, and building that rapport, my job is to create that value. If I can create value, objections tend to go away, especially if we offer payment plans, financing options, any of those. As long as we have those things in place, then you're going through the different objections for a patient indirectly, right? And so we would teach our doctors in our true conversion, go through these elements on every pitch. Like time is one of the biggest things. I don't have time. Well, we manipulate time in our process altogether, right? So we free up time. Then payment is another thing. Well, we offer payment plans through multiple companies, right? Um, Education, for example, I don't understand. Well, we have multiple ways of educating the patient, right? We have scanners, CTs, every gadget that you would need, right? I think if you go through these elements for every patient visit, then rejections kind of go away. So we teach that to our doctors and we go through all these things proactively, not reactively with every patient. And then you will have less and less objections. And if you do have those objections, there's a good chance you haven't, I don't like using the word convinced, but the reason why you haven't convinced that patient is because you haven't properly educated that patient for them to trust that you're the right provider.
This is something that I feel so strongly about because I think that we as providers think of sales as a dirty word and to the point that like we are like, ooh, like salespeople, right? But, like, when I graduated and I was seeing, like, 10 consultations a day for Invisalign, what I realized is that I didn't know how to sell, and that's why my patients weren't getting the care from me that I worked so hard to be able to deliver. But if I can't sell, then they're not gonna get the care they need. And so I think it's so important and amazing that you guys train your associates on sales, which honestly just needs a new word. Like sales
Right.
just needs a rebrand is the truth. It's just like help patients get the care they need. Bam. And it's a skill as hard as dentistry. And the fact that you guys train on that is so incredible because most people don't.
Yeah, I agree. You have to, right? Throughout the years, I heard that from a lot of dentists. They're like, "Well, my work should speak for itself." Well, I go, "Well, your work was on somebody else, not on this new patient, right?" So it doesn't apply to that patient. They see that you might be competent, but they don't know if that's what they need yet, right? So I think confidence is where it starts with, right? For our associates or doctors in general, they have to have confidence in what they're presenting. Like, if I look at my first 5 years presenting implants, I probably did one or two a month, right? My second 5 years of doing implants, I probably did 10 a month, right? And the only thing that changed is over time, I gained confidence. I gained confidence in my ability as an implantologist at the time to present comfortably to the patient, look them in the eyes, say, yes, you need this. This is the best option. Yes, it's going to cost $2,000. I'm not hiding by a recruitment coordinator, right? Or a financial coordinator. Yes, it's going to cost $2,000, but I'm the right person for you. And this is how I'm going to take care of you. And when I had confidence to do that, then all of a sudden my conversion went higher and higher. And it was never about the money because I was in the same practice for 10 years, right? So it was never about the money. It was just I was at up until that point, they didn't trust that I was the right person, or I didn't create enough value for them to understand why they should value implants as much as I did.
Oh, this is so important. I'm so happy that we're talking about this because so many people don't know this. And in my business, we offer patients preventative care through clear aligners. And the first thing that we do when we partner with practices is really like we take the time to go through and educate them on how clear aligners, when done really well, leads to prevention. It is fundamentally preventative care, but we didn't learn that in dental school. And so it's like a fundamental shift. Like, unless you've gone through course, unless you really understand what occlusion really means and how to identify these things, we don't know this. And so you're so right. Like, we need to understand that, be confident in it, be be confident in presenting, and then create the value by learning how to educate. So something that you and I were talking about before is how to successfully incentivize your team. So I want to ask you, what can our listeners learn from you on how you've successfully incentivized your team?
So it's part of one of our core values. So one of our core values is me to we, right? And we have 5 core values, and you guys can go to blueprintsponsors.com. You'll see them all listed on there. Uh, Selfishly, those core values are my personal core values and my business partner's personal core values. So it makes it a little bit easier, right? That's just how we are as humans. That's why we created what we created the way we kind of created it. But we go back to our core values for every decision making that we do, including this one, incentivizing. We kind of believe that to build a great team and great team culture, everything has to be centered around we, and there cannot be a me in that process. So every single incentive, so we have a couple bonuses, right, in our organization. So we have a group bonus, which is monetarily based if we hit certain collection numbers, right? Well, the whole team is involved in that. The front's involved in that. Our remote teams are involved in that. The hygienist, the assistant, the doctor's involved in that. So when we bonus, the entire office bonuses equally, right? Because we believe every single person is just as important in the organization. Everyone besides the doctor, they're on a different pay structure, but everyone that's hourly gets that same bonus. So the hygienist would get $100 at the same time as a front, same time as the assistant. And then we have a fun bonus, which is things that define who we are, right? So there's certain things that we go, hey, we care about customer service in our organization. So for every Google review, we pay our teams X amount of dollars that goes into a pot. But the rules is they have to use it together, right? So at the
Mm.
end of the month, they might generate sometimes 500-600 bucks. And we have multiple things. Google reviews is just one of them. They'll generate 500-600 bucks. And now the team decides together what they want to do with that money. and that leads to team outings and more cultural building. So for us, that's how we incentivize the team uh, to work together to build that team culture all the way through and through. Do we have KPIs for every position? Yes. So we do have KPIs for our front, our assistants, our hygienists, doctors as well. We have pay bands based on the KPIs. So everybody that comes into our organization, an assistant come into our organization and go, this is why we're paying you X amount of dollars per hour because here's the baseline KPIs. If you get to this baseline KPIs, then I don't. It's not longevity in our system, right? We just go, you can get there in 2 months, I'll give you that raise. You get there in 2 years, you'll get it then. You don't get paid for longevity in our organization. You get paid for performance and attitude in our organization. So that's how we kind of do any type of, I guess, incentive, as you would call it.
I love that. So it's a true meritocracy, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's not tenure,
No.
which means you're attracting true winners.
Yeah, we call it the one percenters. If you go to our website, we say we want the one percenters in everything we do. And we understand that you may not think you're the one percenter right now. Our job is if you have the right attitude and you want to be a one percenter, our job is to give you the resources, the community to help you grow into that. Right. And so I'd comfortably say we have a ton of one percenters and we have a ton of people that are growing into one percenters. And the coolest thing for me to see is have an associate that joins us. They work somewhere else for a couple of years, and they're like, "Hey, the most I've ever done is like 40,000. I've been working 6 days a week, right?" And we go, "We only work 4.25. You work Monday to Thursday, 8 to 5, and you cannot work every Friday for us. You have to work every other Friday at the most, and those are half days because the whole lifestyle part of our organization." And I could take them with their it's them, but with our resources and them, they can go from like 40 to 80 within like 6 months with us. Right? And they go,
Wow.
"How is this possible? I'm working less and I'm doing more." And so it's like a win-win. So that's ultimately that's our like 1% mentality. We believe people can get there and our job is to help them get there as soon as possible.
I mean, that's incredible. It sounds like if anyone is an associate who's listening and wants to move to Atlanta, it feels like a really great place. So, okay, amazing. Dipesh, I have one more question for you,
Mhm.
which this is near and dear to my heart because I run my company with my fiance. You've partnered up with your best friend. What makes it work for you guys?
Long story short, before we went into partnerships, we were best friends first. Right. And so we've been friends since dental school. He was my roommate in dental school. And we didn't start off trying to buy our practice together, right? So what ended up happening is I had my practice. He was working same kind of story at a DSO. Things weren't going so well. He's like, I'm not really producing anything. I'm just sitting around. And I had a year on him, and I said, "Hey, let's go find you a practice." Right? I'm like, I don't want any part of that practice. I'm just my friend. I'm gonna help you find your practice. And found a practice, integrate some of the things that I've already learned. He started doing well. We always would altruistically help each other. He owned 100% of his, I owned 100% of mine. And at the time, and we would naturally just help each other as if we had owned it. Our families got along, our kids got along, you know, we always got along. That was a telltale sign that maybe we could do this together in the business as well. So at a certain point in time, we're like, hey, we kind of follow the same trajectory of how our family life goes, our personal life goes, and how we function as humans in the business. What if we were to do this together? Because our thesis was other people may want the same thing, right? So let's be that group that can combat, other groups in the future, if that's the way consolidation would go in dentistry. And so we kind of got together and we both believed it all together. We believe there's an African proverb that says you can go fast alone, but far together.
Oh,
And we're like, hey, together, I think we can take this further than we could individually. So we decided to, join. Prior to joining, we read a book. I think I mentioned it to you. We're an EOS fan. So we read a book called Attraction. And he read it separately and I read it separately. And I was like, look, before we sign up for anything, we have to have some alignment. And I need to find out what you want to be and I want to be in this relationship because we both can't be CEO and both of us can't be CEO at the same time either, right? So we both read that book and we both secretly wanted to be what we're in right now. So we kind of came to the table. He's like, I don't want to be CEO. That's not where my natural strengths are, right? I really enjoyed this part of it. And I go, all right, I'm happy to say that because I want to be the other thing. I think that's more where my natural strengths are. So that's kind of what happened. Then we kind of got together. Our core values were already in alignment. They weren't on paper yet. But if you look at our core values, that's if you meet Ravi, that is him in his personal life as well, right? The same core values. That's me in my personal life as well. So when we kind of got together, our compass was always in the same direction. Our North Star was. And we made some set of rules very early on. And we said, hey, when things are going well, it's easy to be in a relationship, a partnership. Let's plan for the ugly, right? So we plan for the ugly first. And we go, what happens if the company's tanking, right? What happens if family life is not great because this takes up too much? So we decided family over business first, right? Personal life over professional life is that's what the theme of our company is. That we decided that, and we both gave each other full autonomy to pull the plug on each other, as we call it. So, by the way, he can pull my medical plug too. That's in reality as well, but he could pull the plug metaphorically. So if I'm being a bad father or a bad husband and he sees that and it's because of the business and how much time I'm investing in it, he's allowed to pull that plug on. He goes, you need to step away for a while, right? I got you, and vice versa. We had that alignment very early on. And it's almost sounds like a fairy tale. It's been 9 years now since we kind of partnered and consolidated and kind of grew the group. I can't remember a single time we fought. We have healthy disagreements, which just you need to have that, but I can't remember a time we fought because I won't even take on another practice unless he goes, "Hey, I think I'm ready as well." Right? And we won't make big decisions unidirectionally ever, especially if it impacts personal life. So I think in a nutshell, that's why it worked for us. Everything was just aligned, and we still align ourselves every 6 months, every year. We go, what do we want to do? Are you good with this? How's it feel at home? Should we take on this risk? Have you talked to your wife? Talk to mine. Have they talked? We'll talk all together as well sometimes to make the right decision. So,
Wow, this is like I love hearing this story. Personal story. 3 years ago, I had a business mentor kind of tell me the same thing. He was like 15 years older than me, and he's like, Ingrid, you're not going to have time in life for work if you're really work oriented and like it's really a big part of your purpose and your passion. Friends outside of work and family. And so you're going to have to be friends with the people at work. You're going to have to really like those are your friends. Those are your best friends. That didn't register for me back then because I did it. I was like, of course I'm going to have time for all three. I don't have kids yet, but I can tell you that, my family is basically my dog and my fiance. And I barely had time for him and my puppy, and work. That's why I convinced him to join me in my business. And it really just makes such a big difference. And, I think I like what you said about how there isn't really a difference essentially between, how you operate at work and your personal life because it's all intermixed. So
mhm,
it's super cool to hear your story and the fact that you guys haven't had a fight in 9 years because it pushes you, work pushes you. You don't collect as much. It's scary. And so being able to communicate properly with the people you work with who are your friends is such an incredible talent. I want to ask you one final question,
mhm.
Dipesh, which is what do you think is the formula for a happy dentist in 2025?
Oh, that's, I don't know if I can define 2025. I can tell you my definition, right?
That works.
Of happiness. So I actually have it written over here. It's actually my definition of success, but it has happiness in it, if that's okay, right?
Yeah.
Um, Success for us is having the times underlined to do the things that make us genuinely happy. Trying to get as clear as possible about what exactly does truly make you happy, right? Instead of the
Mhm.
stepping stones. So I constantly hear people go, well, if I do this procedure and I make this kind of money, then I'll be happy. I go, well, it sounds like money is the end result. Then that's okay, right? Then make sure you're doing things that you enjoy doing, then you'll be happy, right? So instead of doing things that you must do in order to make this, to have time to do this, to then potentially be happy, shortcut it and make sure part of your life includes the things that genuinely make you happy, right? Spending time with family, friends, going to ball games. Put that part of your life, right? Don't make it just work, right? Put life, in my opinion, before work. And if you're being truthful to yourself while doing that, then I think eventually you will lead towards that happiness that we're all chasing in reality. Knowing that I still think it's just a chase, right? I think we all chase joy. Happiness is just a byproduct.
Mm. So you really prioritize time, which it's I do too, and it really reminds me of this like testimonial that Paul Goodman posted recently from someone who was posting on his Facebook group. And he was like, it's been 10 years since I first started practicing. I forgot what he said, something crazy. He's like, I collected set this crazy number this month. And he's like, honestly, I've never been like more tired, more worn out. Like I finally hit my target collection goal, but I don't know if I could do this another month. Like I don't see my family, I don't see my friends. I'm just exhausted. I don't know what to do. And that's when I was it really that's when I read that, I was like, "You need time." It's not people equate money with success, but I'm totally with you. If you have time to do the things you love, that is, to me, so much more important than the money. What's the money to get you? A nicer meal? A nicer trip?
Exactly.
Yeah, like, you need the time, so
Yep. And that probably explains why our thesis and our core value of our company, number one core value of our company is called respect time. It's limited, right? And we go, it's limited. And we tell our doctors that. That's why we don't let doctors work 5 days a week. We don't. We have doctors
mm,
that come to us that go, I must work 5 days a week. I'm like, then you can't work for us. Right.
that's bold.
And then which is kind of opposite of what most DSOs or groups will want. They'd go, cool. If you want to work 6, I'll open up another day for you. Right. We made a rule because we've kind of seen it play out. I used to work 5.5 days early in my career and I hated it. Right. I was making a little bit extra money, but I was missing all the football games on Saturdays, which that genuinely make me happy. I think all my friends are watching it. So I was like, why am I doing this? Right. It was just chasing some goal monetary that we thought if I get there, then maybe I will be happy. And I got there. And just like that post you're talking about, they got there and they looked back and they go, that didn't make me incrementally happy at all. Right. It did the opposite. Right. So once you have a couple of those moments, you start realizing that I don't like using the word balance, but like that work life balance, we call it work life thrive. Um, you must focus on that, right? And you must do the things that make you happy. It's part of our DNA. Every weekly meeting with our leadership team, at the end of the meeting, the last question is, "What are you going to do this week to make you happy?" That's
Oh,
actually a
wow.
question we ask every single week. They must tell me, and it can't be work related. They must tell me they're doing something that makes them happy, right? That's outside of work, and we force that into our company. So
Depeche, I'm gonna steal that.
yeah, go for it. Yeah.
I'm gonna steal that. That's so good. And I love that you brought up football as like that's what make one thing that makes me genuinely happy. One thing I'll share for our female listeners is I used to have a lot of shame in thinking that like the things that made me happy were, stupid, like getting blowouts or getting my nails done or whatever, right? Like things like that, buying makeup, going shopping. And, like, I burnt out so hard a couple years ago, and I had this kind of moment where someone told me this, it was actually a spiritual coach who was like, "You need what are the things that made you make you happy?" And I wrote them all down, and I was like I felt shame. I was like, "God, I'm so, like, generic." But I started doing them, and it brought me so much joy. It, like, genuinely gave me energy to be like, "Once a week, I get a blowout. Once a week, I get a manicure." I work out a couple times a week. And so for anyone listening, like I think if you just take the time to write those things out and like don't have shame. What brings you joy if you are someone who suffers from that like I did. Because it'll make your whole life better.
Yep. I have a hack for that because some people have asked me how to kind of stay in balance with my schedule and everything else. I'm big on my calendar, right? So everything's on my calendar. The first thing that ever goes on my calendar is the fun stuff first, not the other way around. So I fill my bucket up first to go, hey, this Saturday I'm playing tennis, right? And this Friday I'm doing whatever I like doing, right? That's on my calendar because I know when I'm doing that consistently, and don't get me wrong, it's not like every day I do something that, it's fun, right? But as long as I get my micro doses of that in, it actually feels the business side way more because I'm at my best. I'm a better CEO for our organization. I'm a better husband. I'm a better father, right? When I do those things. But if I don't fill my bucket up first, right? then I have nothing left to give over to anybody else. And sometimes people will have it the other way around. They don't fill their own bucket. They're working first, then giving whatever little time they have to their significant others and kids or whatever it might be at the moment. And then if they get any spare time, they might do the blowout that you're talking about or go to the football
Exactly.
game, right? Might do that, right? And that, I know we didn't talk about it for today, but that, in my opinion, leads to burnout.
Mhm.
That I think is how people burn out. Ultimately, that's why.
So prioritize the things that bring you joy first. Write them down, figure them out because a lot of people
Correct.
haven't.
Yep.
Put them in your calendar.
Put them in your calendar. Make it part of your routine. Then everything else can come.
Dipesh, this has been so fun. Where can people find you?
LinkedIn, probably. LinkedIn's probably the best place to find me. So first name Dipesh, last name Patel, or Blueprint Smiles, and sure you can find me through that. I am on social, but don't really get on like Instagram and stuff that too much. But you can probably find me on there, but you won't find anything relevant. Just retype what my wife puts on there. So
LinkedIn it is.
yeah,
Amazing. Thank you again for taking the time, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
thank you for having me.